Welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of Social Anxiety Life. And today we're going to explore a topic that is inspired by one of our fabulous listeners. Sally wrote to us for an idea with an episode saying the following.
So Sally said, I have an idea for a future episode that I would like to float. You talk a lot about social gatherings being a trigger for anxiety, which I totally relate to. But I also struggle a lot with social anxiety with my existing friends. I have some really special friends who I value a lot, but sometimes experience quite intense anxiety when meeting with them one-on-one. I suddenly feel I've nothing to contribute and find it hard to react to things that they are saying, despite empathizing closely with them. I wonder if this is precisely because I value the friendship so much and worry that if I don't come across as interesting enough, then they won't want to sustain the friendship. I do wonder if this is something that other people experience and would be interested to hear others' thoughts relating to social anxiety and friendship.
There's a lot there.
A lot to unpack, yeah.
I think Sally raises a very important issue. And in our podcast episodes, we talk very often about social anxiety in large gatherings. But Sally raises the issue of anxiety that we experience with close friends. Today, we're going to delve into this using some insightful contributions from our listeners and results from recent polls.
So on Facebook, 87% of respondents said they've experienced social anxiety around friends, with 13% saying they sometimes do. On Instagram, that showed an even higher percentage, with an amazing 97% saying yes and only 3% saying sometimes. When we asked if people have ever experienced social anxiety around friends, 73% said yes, 18% said no, and 9% said sometimes.
Clearly, from those polls, social anxiety around friends is more common than we think. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it was that common, but for us to understand maybe why this is the case and why people feel anxious in the company of those that they trust and value, we've got some very compelling personal stories from our listeners.
Yes. So our next contribution comes from Emmeline. I think it also depends on the situation. If you're out and about with friends, even though you trust them, you can definitely feel socially anxious in the environment. Once my social battery's done, my anxiety increases.
I think the point about social batteries is crucial, and it's almost the capacity for interaction. When it gets to the point where we've had enough, we feel anxious. We feel more anxious than we may do, and it reminds me of, I can't remember whose story, it might have been your story, that being at a social occasion and talking in a group, and you take yourself outside, where you've you get yourself away from it,
a bit of quiet.
Do you find that with people that you know?
I can't say that I have particularly, but I thought that was a really interesting point, sort of making that link between your social battery is your social battery, and obviously in Emmeline's case, sort of regardless of who she's around, when that social battery runs out, you can be with people that you're really comfortable with and you will still struggle. And I definitely relate to that sort of feeling of my social battery is done and it feels like so much of an effort to keep the conversation going.
I was thinking the same thing. I find that even if I have been to social occasions with friends and I've enjoyed it and I've really loved it, I get home.
Yeah.
And, I love living by myself. It's a choice that I've always made, and it's something that I enjoy. I get home and I, almost deflate.
Yeah.
In that I've put a lot into it.
Yeah.
And then I just need my downtime from it because my social battery is depleted from doing what I need to do. But that's not on anyone else.
No. Would you say then that you have experienced that feeling with people you're comfortable with? Like with existing good friends? Or is that more something you experience maybe with unfamiliar people?
I find it's worse with, if I've been to an event with unfamiliar people, I find it almost takes me longer to recover.
Yeah.
But then if I've been out with friends, I can definitely feel tired, but tired is natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not tired because I feel unhappy about something. I'm tired because I know
you've been busy.
I've been busy and hadn't had a good time with them. And I think this leads on to another contribution from Lauren, who's a first-time contributor.
Oh, thank you, Lauren.
And she says that some of the factors are whether they haven't seen some friends for maybe a while and they feel out of practice. The number of friends that are there, they may struggle more with a larger amount of people about where they are and do they feel comfortable in the place. So I think that the environment, now we talked about environment at length in the last episode about whether environment affects social anxiety. So I find it interesting, there's a link there between who is in the environment, and I don't know if she's saying that it doesn't matter if it's close friends or other people in the environment, but the environment definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, and that point about being almost out of practice, so that point of if you haven't seen people for a while, maybe that, my understanding of her contribution is that, that increases her social anxiety because it almost takes her time to get back into it, into being able to have those conversations and feel comfortable.
How interestingly would you get yourself back into practice? Because I find that phrase, out of practice, so you haven't done it for a while. And I understand, getting back into practice, there's certain things that you do before the event, because I think the social anxiety for me is greater at any point. It's before the event that's happened.
Yeah.
Once you get to the event, it's almost you've got to get on. You're going to get on with it.
Yeah. You just sort of you plow through it, don't you? And sometimes you actually end up enjoying yourself. Sometimes you don't. But once you're there, you're there. It's all the overthinking beforehand.
I think that sort of getting it back into practice, I think there's differences here between being neurodiverse and being introverted, which we again talked about at length in a previous episode. Some neurodivergent people will script what they're going to say. They'll run it over in their head, which I have done before. And I almost think to myself, right, what things can I talk about? Which things are the sort of the safe topic? And that is with friends sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I know I can talk about, you can talk about work, you can talk about the weather, you can talk about what you've been doing recently, but sometimes even talking about what you've been doing recently, sometimes I think, well, I haven't really got a lot to say.
I also think, the point about feeling out of practice, maybe if you're in a situation where you have an event or something coming up with maybe a larger group of your friends, maybe a way to kind of get back into the practice is just meeting up with one of them or a couple of them, just to kind of ease yourself back into that kind of whole social side of things, because that might be easier, those sort of one-to-one conversations to kind of build up to those sort of events or those big gatherings that can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's things that we do, there's things maybe we do through human nature to prepare ourselves. I mean, the evidence always says that we're naturally sociable creatures. And, there are times where, even though I live on my own, sometimes I do want sort of the buzz of like hearing conversation in the background. So I've said before that I go to places on my own, and that's a sensory thing for me in that, I'm sitting down, having my coffee, I've got my book, and I can just hear the buzz in the background, whether it's music, whether it's other things as well. And I also prefer one-to-one conversation. And usually I don't have to plan what I'm saying in advance for that sort of thing. I can just go with it.
We also had a contribution from Hannah. So thank you, Hannah, who said, well, it kind of comes out of the blue for me. I can start off feeling really comfortable, and then all of a sudden there's a rising sense of panic and I feel incredibly self-conscious. Sometimes going red, other times I manage to make an excuse and leave the room. It can be among a group or just with one or two friends, and in different situations. I generally find meals out or going to the pub with a group the most likely situations where I will start to feel anxious. If it was going to watch a band or something similar where your focus is elsewhere, I tend to be fine.
There's a lot in there in Hannah's contribution that I resonate with. The last comment about going to watch a band or something similar where your focus is elsewhere. When I go to a club, one of the reasons I like it because the music is so loud. That's my sensory hit, as it were. My sensory is almost a release of the dopamine effect because I love hearing the music, and I think, I've got to make conversation.
Yeah.
Because you can't listen, you can't hear the person.
Yeah.
And when Hannah says about going for meals out or going to the pub, the most likely situations where they start to feel anxious, I understand that because there's less of the sensory, or is there? I don't know. Just thinking out loud, actually, there's still potential for sensory overload in terms of it's busy. There's a lot of people there, but generally, if you go into a pub or sitting down for a meal, you're sitting round a table, so there's going to be conversation.
Yeah.
Happening.
Yeah, I feel like if I was to be asked, right, next week you've got to go out with 6 people that maybe you don't know super well, are you going to go out to a bar or something, or are you going to go and sit down in a restaurant and have a meal? I sort of get her point about if you're sitting down with a meal, it's almost like the attention is going to be more on you. There's more expectation there to have conversation, keep conversation going. Where am I going to sit? Who am I going to sit next to? Whereas something like maybe going to see a band or going on a night out, you've got those distractions. You can move around more. You can kind of step away. So I think that's sort of drawing attention to the fact that it is about the people you're with, but the setting can also be a massive factor in social anxiety.
Environment. We keep coming back to the environment, don't we? Where it's what's going on. Like the pub. I mean, you can stand in a pub, you can sit in a pub, you can go outside, you can be wherever, but it still doesn't stop the social anxiety because we've said before that there might be multiple conversations going on.
Yeah.
And it's almost you're thinking about your thing that you want to say and it's moved on so quickly.
Yeah.
And because in a pub, there is other stuff going around in terms of there's people talking at the bar. There might be, even the food coming out. The food might have a smell that you don't particularly like. So coping with all of that and anxiety around being around other people, it's no surprise that it can lead to sensory overload.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on, there's another contribution we had via Instagram, and this person, sorry, actually, I thought for a moment this person was going to said they wanted to remain anonymous, but actually they said it's fine. So Lisa got in touch with us via Instagram and said that they have certain friends who may trigger them in terms of their anxiety. And if the friends are consuming a lot of alcohol, there may be some drama.
Oh, interesting. I like that.
Spicy, isn't it?
I mean, I suppose that's kind of drawing on that idea of someone's behaviour being unpredictable. If someone is consuming lots of alcohol, people react very differently, don't they? And if you're a socially anxious person and you're out with someone who is consuming a lot and is maybe becoming unpredictable, I could, not that I've necessarily been in that situation very much, but I could completely relate to, I think that would make my anxiety pretty bad as well, to be honest, because I'd be so overly aware of what was going on, and sort of overthinking would probably kick in.
There's multiple threads to previous episodes in this contribution Obviously, we talked about alcohol to an extent. Overthinking we've talked about before. And yeah, it's the unpredictability of, if you have alcohol, it can change your social anxiety.
Yeah.
Alcohol can relax you, but obviously in moderation.
Oh, yes, of course.
But that's another layer to the conversation.
Yes. We had another contribution from Lisa, but this is a different Lisa.
That's right. Yes. It's a Lisa that lives in an undisclosed location.
Like an undisclosed location. She said, I think you can have social anxiety around friends. If you're in a situation where friends have brought others that you don't know into the meeting, it can cause anxiety.
Yeah, this hits home, this one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this touches on so many episodes we've done where it's that point of people you don't know, people you're not comfortable with. And that is such a trigger for so many people of, I might be comfortable with my friends, but yeah, if my friends suddenly turn up with a group of people I don't know, it completely changes the dynamic.
Yeah, I almost want to say, why did you invite them? Yeah. I almost want to say to them, if a friend brings another person along and they haven't forewarned me about it, right. I almost want to say to them, how inconsiderate. But that's rude, isn't it? That's really rude.
Maybe. But then I do think it's quite polite to, if you're bringing someone else, it is sort of the polite thing to let someone
else. If a friend invited another person that they know that I don't know, and they messaged me first, I'd probably still go.
Yeah.
And I'd probably be okay, because you've got the friend is the common denominator. The friend is it's almost the friend is going to have the role of directing the conversation, because they know about you and their friend. But yeah, I've been to places where has been multiple unknowns in there, and I just think, oh my goodness, that's something else I've got to contend with. That there's people there. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And then it's, where do you go? Where do you position yourself? It's those introductions.
Yeah.
And small talk. That's another one we've spoken about. Small talk is almost, you've got to stand there and make the conversation. How are you? What do you do for work? How's this? Etc. And, I want to have deep and meaningful conversations. I don't particularly want to stand there or sit there talking about mundane things.
Yeah.
Because, on one hand, I do recognise small talk is important for some people, but for me, I'd rather do away with it.
Yeah. I think for me, very similar. I think if I was in a situation where I was meeting up with a friend or a couple of friends and they brought one person or even a couple of people, I'd probably be fine. But it would be a situation if I was meeting up with my friends and then all of a sudden it was just a completely different social situation than what I thought I was going into, and there was like loads of people I didn't know and I wasn't expecting it, I'd really struggle, because I feel like before meeting up with people or going to a social event, you think about it so much and you picture it and you imagine it and you sort of mentally prepare for what it's going to be. So to then turn up and it's completely different to what you had mentally prepared for can be very unsettling.
Do you know, I actually had something that happened today that gave me some social anxiety.
Oh, really?
In that, I was coming home from work and I had to get the lift. I could have got the stairs, but the lift's quicker. So I got into the lift. There was another person in the lift, and we were going down to the platform at the train station. They started making conversation.
Oh, really?
I mean, all they said was, "Hi, how are you?" And I said, "I'm fine."
Oh, right.
And the conversation, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
But
then I thought,
gave you anxiety.
Yeah, because then I thought, what are they speaking to me for?
Yeah.
They don't know me.
Yeah.
What do I say back to them? But fortunately, the lift had got to the platform. And I was like, yeah, I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm going now. But, people do ask, hi, how are you? Yeah. But for me, my brain was thinking, well, there's no reason for that person.
Ah, that's so interesting.
To speak to me. But I felt sort of on the spot like I had to think of something.
Yeah.
But luckily, I didn't have to say anything, because we got to where we needed to go. And the fact it was only me and the other person in the lift. Yeah. Usually, if there's multiple people in a lift, there's none of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gave me quite a lot of
goodness, anxiety,
and I just felt, I didn't know what to say.
Yeah. Well, it sounded like you said the right thing and moved on.
I did. I moved on very quickly.
Right. We also had a contribution from Lillian, who said, "You can feel more alone in a crowd. It's a scary feeling, especially if your friends don't understand or know what you're going through." And I mean, again, this is such a thing that we've talked about people understanding and how important it is that your friends at least try to understand your social anxiety and what difference it can make to someone who struggles with social anxiety.
It's how much you, in a way, it's how much you share with friends, because you'll know that there'll be some people who will get it completely, even if they don't have it themselves. They understand, they make the effort to understand. So if they're inviting you to an event, I mean, I've had one particular good friend who has said, "I understand that there's going to be a lot of people here, and I understand if you don't want to go.
Yeah.
But this person also knows what I do, my strategies in place." That's the gold standard of understanding. And there's friends who I would say pay lip service to it. And then there's friends that they almost dismiss it. Dismiss it as, oh, it's just, it's just one of those things.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, and actually you're not fine at all.
Yeah.
You're standing there and like you're masking your way through it, and it's very hard.
Yeah. Well, and it's that point, isn't it, of there's so much under the surface that's going on with the overthinking, all of that. And a lot of that's not visible to other people. So on the surface, you might look like you're doing fine and you're actually coping really well, but actually internally, you're absolutely panicking and worrying and overthinking.
So I found it very interesting listening to the contributions. So I'm just sort of thinking here, what can we take away from these insights?
I mean, I was really surprised actually, because I would say for me personally, social anxiety around existing friends is not something I've really experienced. I mean, I don't have like loads and loads of friends. I've got very close friends, small groups of very close friends. It's not something I've really experienced. But I think, the contributions and the polls really show us that social anxiety around friends is a very real and probably more common than we might think.
I draw is almost a parallel between, telling people about yourself. There's things that we choose to share with people. You may choose to sort of share your sexuality, or if you're neurodivergent. It's almost social anxiety is something similar to that.
Yeah.
I think once you've said it to people and you've explained what it is, I would say the majority of people that I've told would have either said, "Oh, I would never have guessed," and then I explain what I go through in social occasions. Or generally, friends are more understanding of it when you tell them.
Yeah, I would say generally very positive experiences with sharing it.
And it's being assertive, I think, with what helps you not get through it, because getting through it sounds bad.
Yeah.
But almost to facilitate almost a smoother running of the social event. So we've spoken before about our strategies of going outside, having something to distract you with, fidgets, trusted person.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to do that. You've got to, in a way, tell your friends how it is.
Yeah. And hopefully, listening to this episode, hearing so many contributions that do talk about, yes, I've experienced social anxiety with my friends. The polls, the numbers were massive. Yes, I've experienced that. Hopefully that maybe brings some reassurance to people to know that experience or that feeling, they're not alone in it. Actually, it seems like a very common experience that a lot of people go through.
Definitely. I think I'd like to, on behalf of us both, thank everybody who's contributed to the discussion. They're very invaluable, your contributions, and we encourage you to email us, message us with your contributions, maybe about future episodes or something that you maybe have listened to that resonates strongly. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please share, subscribe on your favourite podcast platform.
Thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.